By the way, fabulous. Read the book, fabulous. Reads gripping, suspenseful. Explain, this is my wheelhouse. I'm in my 60s. This is when I moved to the city during the Bernie Goetz era. So I felt it like with a nostalgia. But explain, I was in the office with kids and they were like, who's Bernie Goetz? And I was like, what?
Yeah.
I had to say to them, like 30 years from now, people will be saying to you, like, who's Diddy? And you're like, what?
Yeah, no, I remember it as well. I remember it coming up to New York in the 80s. This event happens, and, it was kind of took us all aback then, but I've been thinking about it again, and I thought we need to know who this guy is.
Explain. Bernie Goetz, this is 1984. He shoots 4 young black males on a subway train.
That's right.
In Manhattan.
Yeah, and it's close quarters, and he's on there for like 5 minutes, and within those 5 minutes, he's decided he doesn't like the gleam in one of their eyes. The kid asks him for $5, panhandling, as we remember, big thing in New York in the 80s. And he turns, pulls out a .38 Wesson, and just Smith & Wesson just takes him out. One in the chest, his friend in the back who's trying to get away. The next kid trying to get away in the arm, goes through his lungs. And then the 4th kid, he misses. But then he goes over to him and he, quaking in fear, waiting, hoping the guy's going to go away. And he says, you look all right. Here's another. And he shoots him point blank range, severing his spinal cord and paralyzing him. But then he becomes a hero to all New Yorkers, except for not quite all New Yorkers. Right. The New Yorkers who thought, we need a Charles Bronson, we need a Dirty Harry in the city to take care of business. And I kind of felt like that moment had a lot to tell us about the moment we're in, where violence is, again, unleashed, legally okay, where a guy in Minneapolis can literally be shot in the head. And we are told that up is down, down is up. We didn't see what we thought we saw. I think this is a beginning story to that.
And by the way, the description that you're making of what happened, that's not even your interpretation. That's his interpretation. That's Bernie Goetz gave interviews to the Concord police and to other people saying, and I went up to the kid, the 4th kid, and went, you seem okay, and I shot. Like, that's his description of it, not, and this is in the time, so you have to set the scene. There's no iPhones.
That's right.
There's no anything. It really is the unreliability of eyewitness accounts in a kind of frenetic moment.
But the thing is, people had already decided he was a hero, and that's kind of what I wanted to get into, right? He goes on the lam. He disappears into the subway tunnels. People don't even know who he is.
Right.
And he's already on the front page, right? He was known as a subway vigilante. When he turns himself in, he gives this 2-hour detailed confession. Robbery had nothing to do with it.
That's right. Previously
being mugged had nothing to do with it. And it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter when he goes to trial. It's not going to matter to so many New Yorkers. And I think we got to look at that moment, because today we're kind of there again, right? We see it. We see a videotape, but yet we're told.
It actually felt, it's hard to underestimate how popular Bernie Goetz was.
That's right.
In that moment. And I remember, we all remember the city back then was super fun. Yeah. Like, I was young, it was completely lawless. I lived on the Canal Street stop, so one stop before he shot him around Chambers Street, I guess. Mm-hmm. And it was, I used to come home from working my restaurant job 2 a.m. on the subways, and luckily I looked pathetic enough, nobody bothered me, but it was a hustle back then.
Oh, it was.
A lot of drugs.
Yeah, bad news. I mean, it's 84, right?
Yeah.
And it's the height of the Reagan 80s. Everything's getting stripped. Public resources are getting stripped.
That's
Trash
right.
is piling up. People are turning to the illegal economy of drugs.
That's right.
But here's the thing. They are being told that the problem is not the change in the economy that Reagan had really implemented. The problem was, people worse off than them. So again, that playbook is really getting cemented right then.
No, once again, they're being told it's not any systemic failures. It's people like these 4 kids. Those 4 kids were a stand-in. And by the way, like, they were there to rob, just not people. They were going to pop pinball machines.
That's right.
For coins.
They were on their way to a video arcade to jimmy them open, get quarters.
Yes.
Because again, they're from the South Bronx, and that area has also been completely stripped of resources. Jobs are gone, and they need some money. But that context, right, is what gets lost. Context stops mattering, basically.
His bullets were a stand-in for the frustration that people felt for what they thought was an unmanageable city. And it wasn't just I mean, New York City, and I can remember, you know, my grandfather drove a cab in Brooklyn. My other grandfather ran a dry cleaner in Washington Heights. Like, they were very familiar with property crime and all those things. But New York City from the 60s and 70s, after the oil shock, I mean, New York City was broke in 75. Like, it was fraying at the seams.
75.
For many years.
Well, the fiscal crisis was devastating. The thing is, that crisis begins to rebound in other places. Other places on the globe. It was a global crisis.
Yes.
But what happens is Reagan gets elected and he sort of doubles down on the austerity, right? Rather than rebounding. But meanwhile, the rich are getting richer, richer, richer.
Yes.
But the eye isn't on that ball. The eye is on the misery. And whose fault is it? And the thing is, I think the book, I hope, really kind of lays bare, it's curated. You've got this media that's curating this outrage, this racial outrage particularly.
The echoes of today, I mean, it's not even that they're echoes, it's the same people. The guy running the media machine that lionized Bernie Goetz was...
Rupert Murdoch's New York Post.
They're all like, I've heard of that guy. I don't like what he does at all.
That's right.
That was when he made his bones.
That's right. That's what allows him to really make his mark in New York City, and it's what's going to pave the way for Fox News. And it's not just him, right? It's Giuliani's on the scene here, and Trump is on the scene here. So all these
Trump
guys
and Goetz sort of mirror each other in that both raised and both have frustrations with the thing, both have that same antagonism towards what they consider to be the underclass that doesn't belong there.
Yeah, but Trump is watching this case. He is watching what happens when someone does something like this. What's the response? And the response becomes his base. The response becomes, that's what I need to take the White House. And he's gonna, it's a kind of an story, I have to say, it's a story that even surprised me.
And he didn't really, did he jump in on the Bernie Goetz? I know that he jumped in on what was so-called the Central Park Five.
That's right. So he waits, he doesn't jump in on this case, but he's very much central to that coverage of the time, the New York Post coverage, and Giuliani is the real link between them there. And Giuliani's New York, the New York that's gonna come out of this.
And the same way they set the hyperbolic tone for today with immigrants, they set with people from, I mean, you would have thought, I lived here, man, like, it was actually like really fun. It was a little more dangerous than probably it is today, but like not crazily so. And but they made it out to be like, I remember the headlines were Time Magazine, super predators, young black kids that are, they're super soldiers that will kill you. They'll Wilding was the big, you know, that would be considered like a social media thing back then, but like that was, and people really took out their frustration on these kids who weren't perfect victims, but they certainly weren't the masterminds and evildoers that they were made out to be.
But they're made into the victims. That's, I mean, I'm sorry, into the villains, not the victims. Overnight, right? These are kids that have racked up a lot of misdemeanor offenses, you know, jumping the subway turnstiles. The minute they get shot, all of a sudden judges are turning those misdemeanor citations into warrants for their arrest. The hate mail that's pouring into their apartments, to the hospital, and their lives are destroyed by this. But at the end of the day, they never get grace. They never get to be the victims. And so we didn't even know who they were. We didn't know their names. So for me in the book, it was really important to kind of lay bare, what are the costs of all this violence? What are the costs of unleashing this kind of rage and then saying it's perfectly legal, okay? We begin to see, why do we get a Trayvon Martin situation, right? Why is George Zimmerman allowed to do what he's allowed to do?
It traces all the way back.
It just keeps going.
I was actually heartened at the racism. the letters to the editor. She puts in letters to the editor that people wrote to the Post and to the Daily News. You know, I go on Twitter sometimes and I'm like horrified in the comment section. Like, oh my God, how can people be this horrifying?
Right.
But at least there they go by like Cuck Boy 101. Like, these are letters to the editor that are like, these animals, and using the N-word and saying like horrible things about them. You know, yours truly, Louis Vitarelli. Like,
No,
they just
right.
put their name on it. And
That's
they were
right.
like, and back in the day, like, you couldn't just tweet, like, you had to buy a stamp. You had to walk that thing to a post office box. That's commitment.
Yeah. And the thing is, not just letters coming to the editors in New York.
Come to them.
And coming to the boys, coming to New York Post from Colorado, from California, I mean, this becomes a national phenomenon because it touched a moment that was really shifting. You know, Rebirth of White Rage. Always, you know, white rage is ubiquitous in American history, but this is a moment when it gets unleashed like it hadn't been since the 19th century, and legally okay like it hadn't been.
And by the way, so Bernie Goetz was not convicted of
That's right.
Attempted murder or any of those things. They got him on
Carrying an illegal weapon.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is another dichotomy that I think is really interesting, because so much of the conditions that those young men grew up in were so difficult. If you look at the life of Bernie Goetz and those kids, they're somewhat parallel, but the difference is grace. The difference is margin of error. So Bernie Goetz's dad is arrested for suspicion of, I guess, child molestation, like real serious stuff. He plea bargains down to disturbing the peace, or like misdemeanor, some kind of a thing. And continues, and is wealthy, and sends Bernie to like a prep school in Switzerland. The kid who got shot and paralyzed, his dad's a truck driver who's killed.
Yep. Trying to defend his truck from a would-be thief.
And those two moments really typify what grace does to the trajectory of a person's life. And the ultimate irony is these kids' first introduction to the criminal justice system is for misdemeanor bullshit.
Yeah.
Jumping a turnstile, smoking some dope. Bernie Goetz is a dope smoker with illegal guns whose dad bargained down. I mean,
he's got marijuana in his apartment when he's arrested, and no one blinks an eye. This is at a time period in New York City when if you get arrested for marijuana, you're off to Attica. You are off to one of New York's building prisons.
Right. And so I guess it's always curious to me that people don't draw the parallel of what margin of error means to the future of a person. And what's he, you know, today, is he repentant in any way, do you know?
No.
He's not repentant, or you don't know?
No, he's not repentant. I mean, when
Right.
Kyle Rittenhouse goes and shoots people, he is weighing in and supports him. When Daniel Penny chokes out someone on a subway in the modern iteration of this, he is, you know, he's supportive. So no. But again, you know, that's the grace, right? He's asked the question, what do you think about this? And he gets to weigh in. And then meanwhile, the wreckage of his act gets completely erased from the memory.
How many of these young boys are still alive?
Only two.
Only two. Two of them, one committed suicide.
Yep.
And the other.
One of them ends up in prison. He was battling a drug addiction after this. He ends up locked up, and of course, prison will slowly kill you. So he comes home and dies shortly thereafter. So two are left, and I think that the center of the story that I try to tell was not just paralyzed, but then suffered pretty severe brain damage from going into a coma after his injury. So all of these young teenagers are fighting for their life, but the media is celebrating the vigilante, and that again, that up and down, that up is down, down is up moment. I think we have to reckon with.
Absolutely. And if you want to get yourselves nice and boiled up and angry, read about how the media goes. So there's a ton of lawsuits. I mean, this Goetz case dominated New York for years and years, and then there were civil lawsuits and all kinds of other things. But read about how, and I can't remember if it was a reporter for the Post or the Daily News, They go to, was it Daryl Caby's? Was it when he was at the...
Jimmy Breslin goes to his hospital room.
Goes to his hospital room and interviews him when he's like knocked out. But then another guy goes and secretly records him.
Oh, this is Bernie Goetz hires this paralegal investigator who essentially goes and calls up Daryl, who is in a rehab center, poses as a doctor to try to get him to admit basically that he's not suffered any brain damage, and then goes to the rehab facility posing as someone who's just trying to get their brother in and films him. In this, but you know, that was when Daryl Caby's mother, who is a true heroine in this story, she refuses to let this go. She doesn't want her son forgotten. And so she files the civil suit on his behalf. So there is a civil trial, and it is a kind of extraordinary story where they're not giving up, but Bernie Goetz gets to defend himself pro se. So he gets to depose the young man that he shot and his mother. So it's this extraordinary, you know, it's...
And that's where revelations come out in the trial that didn't come out in the criminal trial, where people go like, oh, I think we might have this up, where all the revelations about his own words and all that. And ultimately, he does lose the civil suit, yes?
He does. He gets a $43 million judgment against him, thanks to a Bronx jury, but he doesn't pay a dime.
So, all in all, it's quite a happy tale. Don't tell me how it ends. It's a remarkable, and I have to say, like, it's such a time and place that I remember so well as a young man, and you captured it remarkably and beautifully in all of its contradictions and cleavages. And the city was torn apart in those days. So. Really nicely done. So
thank you.
Thank you for being here. It's called Fear and Fury. It's available now. Heather Ann Thompson.